Chapter 321, Eternal Devil Syndrome. Among the Eternal, for whom mortality is almost non-existent, illness was supposed to be impossible. Their bodies are fundamentally different from humans, who fall ill from viruses and internal dysfunction. Yet one mental malady, Mod Wiry, upended that certainty. It is considered incurable. An Eternal struck by it slips into madness under various external triggers, loses reason, and attacks indiscriminately. Tina, one of the 10, was unfortunate enough to contract it. When the Eternal team was stationed in the ancient city of Tenochtitlan, humanity was tearing itself apart with civil war and invaders. Several members of the Eternal wanted to use their powers to intervene. They could not bear to watch humans slaughter one another. But intervention violated the Eternal mandate. Their duty was to protect humans from deviance, nothing more. They were meant to be observers, to watch the arc of history, the rise and fall of civilizations. Tina's Mod Wiry was triggered by that human conflict. At onset, darkness gnawed at Tina's reason. She became agitated and nearly killed their leader, Ajak. The other Eternals acted quickly and subdued her. Because her sickness was still in its early stages, Tina gradually returned to lucidity as her companions called to her. Then Ajak proposed something many found troubling, to erase Tina's memories. Ajak, who retained hers, knew the truth about Mod Wiry. Others might call it a curse, but Ajak understood its origin. In the comics, Mod Wiry is described as a curse. In the cinematic world of the Celestials, however, Mod Wiry stems from repeated memory deletion operations imposed on the Eternal. The Celestials, in their efforts to create a race to shepherd the emergence of a god, meddled with the Eternal minds. Their deletions were not always thorough. Traces of past planetary missions remained. Those fragments, pressed against an Eternal's mind and endurance, could crack the psyche. Mod Wiry, then, was not inherently incurable so much as a collapse under the pressure of residual memory and unbearable mental strain. Ajak proposed erasing Tina's memories because, to their knowledge, it was the only way to stop the cycles of relapse. Her proposal did not sit well with everyone. The incident emboldened Druig, the Eternal who could control minds, to question their mission. He was furious that they could stop human slaughter, but were forbidden from doing so. Druig left the team. Before doing so, he used his power to halt the fighting between two nations' armies. Ajak used the moment to disband their team, telling the remaining Eternals to let humanity live through the centuries leading to the god's emergence. Gilgamesh and Tina, 2 of the 10, withdrew together and disappeared from the greater group. Like Icarus and Circe, Gilgamesh and Tina shared feelings for one another, though they never married by human rights, at least not visibly. Whatever private rights they may have held, no one knows. Over the following centuries, Tina's Mod Wiry worsened. Gilgamesh took her away to seclusion in a vast, empty desert, finding a place tens of thousands of kilometers of sand and stone from anyone else. There he built a simple house of earth and mud and watched over her. Now Noah and Ajak approached that mud house. The desert stretched flat and empty, but a sand dune not far from the dwelling was piled with large deviant corpses. Their forms weren't the wolfish type Noah recognized from earlier encounters. They differed from one another, but were clearly deviants, unsealed after the resurrection wind. The corpses smelled of recent death. Deviants, Ajak said, surprised. I didn't expect them to track us this far. Noah followed her gaze. Do they have some way of finding you? He asked. The desert was vast. It seemed unlikely they'd simply stumble onto Gilgamesh's cabin by chance. Ajak shook her head. We don't know. The deviants, and we have been at war for millennia. They evolve. Their abilities vary. There's a lot we still don't understand. Near the corpses, under a withered tree, a figure in white sat with her head bowed. It had to be Tina, her clothes stark against the bleached sand. Given how fresh the deviant bodies were, Tina's episode was likely recent. Mod Wiry often flared with violence and confusion. Noah decided not to approach her. Instead, he started toward the mud house and stopped at the wooden door. We're here, he said, holding out his hand. You can knock. Ajak nodded and raised her hand to rap, but the door opened from within before she touched it. Gilgamesh stood framed in the doorway, a towering, muscular man who'd sensed movement outside and come to investigate. He had probably expected Tina to remain lost in her state for some time, so he came out to see what had happened. Seeing Ajak, Gilgamesh's face lit up. Ajak, it's been so long. He spread his arms and embraced her with warmth. Ajak returned the smile and patted his back. When Gilgamesh finally drew back and noticed Noah, he blinked, then looked again, taking in Noah's presence beside Ajak. The greeted moment shifted into the next unknown. Who was the newcomer at his door? Chapter 322. Tina, who is this? Gilgamesh asked, looking at Noah, who stood beside Ajak, clearly puzzled. This is Noah, a human friend of mine. He's the one who brought me here, Ajak said. Noah nodded to Gilgamesh. Hello. If you're Ajak's friend, you're my friend too, Gilgamesh replied with a smile. He glanced around and then frowned. What's wrong, Gilgamesh? Ajak asked. You said he brought you here, so where's your transport? Gilgamesh wondered. Ajak had called him a human. For a human to get this deep into the desert, Gilgamesh assumed they'd need a vehicle. They couldn't have walked. Ajak smiled and shook her head. Gilgamesh, Noah isn't an ordinary human. He has great power. We flew here from the sky. Really? Humans have superpowers too? Gilgamesh said skeptically. In his mind, humans were fragile creatures who relied on technology for strength. He'd seen Iron Man and the swift-wind swordsman on TV, humans in high-tech suits, so the idea of an ordinary human with innate power sounded strange. Of course, even Icarus couldn't match him, Ajak said. Noah remained expressionless, arms folded, studying the interior of the little house through the wooden door behind Gilgamesh. The stove inside still had embers, and Gilgamesh wore an apron he'd apparently been cooking. Seeing that, Noah's face didn't change. What? You're kidding. Gilgamesh's disbelief was obvious. I'll explain later, Ajak cut him off. Where's Tina? How is she? Gilgamesh's smile vanished. Tina, she had another episode. She's outside by herself right now. I wanted to let her calm down before waking her. Are the symptoms getting worse? Ajak's brow tightened. Gilgamesh led Ajak and Noah to a spot not far from the withered tree Noah had seen from the sky. Tina sat beneath it in white clothes, surrounded by sheets of paper covered with strange doodles. She had her back to them, shoulders trembling as she continued to draw. Noah could hear her muttering under her breath. I'll just call you Noah. Be careful. Tina's symptoms can be dangerous. Don't get too close, Gilgamesh warned kindly. Even if Ajak claimed Noah could defeat Icarus, Gilgamesh wasn't entirely convinced. Noah nodded and studied the scene. Bone ornaments hung from the withered branches above. Stones encircled the trunk in a deliberate ring. Noah wasn't sure whether it was some kind of performance art or an ancient ritual. Listening to the fragments of memory drifting from Tina's murmurs, Mod Wyrie, he suspected the circle might represent the planet they kept referring to, the one destroyed on their last mission. I saw a lot of deviant corpses nearby. Did they cause Tina's episode? Ajak asked. Yes, Gilgamesh said with a helpless shrug. The deviants are still around. They attacked, and Tina's emotions were triggered. That sent her into this state. The deviants are coming back, Ajak said. They're actively attacking. Others might be hit next. Gilgamesh nodded, then stepped closer. Hey, Tina, he said softly, stretching out his hand. Over the years, he'd learned how to handle Tina's Mod Wyrie episodes. Calm her, talk her down, and keep at it for half a day if needed. It usually worked. Tina's shoulders quivered at the sound of his voice. Just as Gilgamesh thought she might be waking, she spun around. Cosmic energy flared from her palm, forming a golden halberd that she swung at him. Clang! Gilgamesh was used to sudden attacks. He gathered his own cosmic energy into an energy gauntlet and blocked the halberd's blow. Tina, he called, trying to pull her back to herself. Everyone on Xandarva 6 will die, Tina cried. A golden short sword shimmered into being in her other hand. It's too late. We can't save them. Noah saw Tina's face, the pale whites of her eyes, a telltale sign of Mod Wyrie. Her words were echoes of a memory. Xandar 6 was the planet from their last mission, now destroyed. At the end of that mission, a new celestial had been born. The planet had been absorbed by that birth. In her memory, she hadn't saved the world. She had been part of its destruction. The realization that she had helped bring about the deaths of all those people had crushed her. Under the weight of that horror, her mind sometimes fractured. As Tina prepared to strike again, a yellow light flashed in her eyes, and her movement halted. Gilgamesh turned and saw Noah with his hand raised, yellow energy flickering in his palm. Before he could ask what Noah had done, Tina, still with a blank expression, spoke again. Gilgamesh. And Jack? Chapter 323, Healing Eternal Devil Disease. Gilgamesh. Ajak? Just as Gilgamesh was about to ask what Noah was doing, Tina's voice came from behind him. It wasn't the garbled speech of Maud Wyrie. He turned immediately and looked at her. Her eyes had returned to normal. The milky whiteness had receded, and pupils were back. She had come out of the Maud Wyrie state. Tina, are you all right? Gilgamesh stepped forward and supported her. She was still a little shaky. I'm fine. What happened? Tina asked, confused. She knew she had just recovered, but this time it felt different. In the past, she always pulled herself back gradually or responded to Gilgamesh's calls. Now it felt like someone had reached in and pulled her out for her, something that had never happened before. That's good, and look who's here. Gilgamesh breathed a sigh of relief when he saw her steady. He gestured behind Tina, where Ajak stood with an unfamiliar human. Tina, this is Ajak, and that's Noah, Gilgamesh said, giving Noah a meaningful look. He'd noticed a yellow light around Noah's hand just before Tina returned to normal. It appeared Noah had used some power to help her. Gilgamesh felt a surge of excitement. For centuries, he had searched for a way to cure Maud Wyrie. Even the Eternal's advanced medicine could not cure it. Now he'd just witnessed something that actually affected the condition. Hope flared. This human Ajak had brought might not be ordinary at all. Ajak, watching closely, spoke up as well. What did you do, Noah? Ajak had seen the same thing, a yellow glow from Noah's hand, then Tina snapping back. She was astonished. To her, Maud Wyrie had always seemed like a terminal, untreatable illness. Short of resetting memories entirely, there had been no way. An experiment, Noah said quietly, but it seems to work. He had used the Mind Stone to test its effect on Maud Wyrie. At root, Maud Wyrie was caused by residual, overlapping memories that hadn't been fully cleared, which crowded the patient's mind and caused periodic confusion. The Mind Stone could not only influence minds, but also alter memories. Noah had tried using it to isolate and remove the chaotic, alien memories while preserving the person's original self. The attempt had succeeded. He separated Tina's disordered memories from her Earth memories and restored her. That's incredible. Can you really cure Maud Wyrie? Ajak said, hope and urgency in her voice. I should be able to, Noah replied. His approach resembled the method Ajak had suggested before, memory clearing, but the Mind Stone let him do it precisely, excising only the foreign fragments while keeping the original memories intact. That was something the Eternal technology could not do. Their tools only allowed for full memory wipes. Ajak's face lit up. A problem that had haunted them for millions of years suddenly showed a way forward. Noah, I beg you, help Tina. Free her from this torment so she can live a normal life again. I can do it, Noah said. I'll go in and clear those memories. For him, it was almost routine. For Ajak and the others, it was miraculous. Gilgamesh and Tina walked closer while Ajak explained what Noah would do. As she listened, Gilgamesh's expression shifted between shock and cautious joy. Soon all three Eternals stood before Noah. Noah, Gilgamesh said first, his voice heavy with expectation. We heard from Ajak that you can cure Tina. We are truly grateful. If you can take her out of Maud Wyrie, you will have my eternal thanks. Tina looked at Noah as well, eyes full of longing. She had suffered for centuries and desperately wanted her old life back. Did Ajak tell you about the method? Noah asked. Yes, Gilgamesh answered after a moment's hesitation. Memory was a sacred, delicate thing. Allowing someone to enter and alter it was terrifying. Ajak's testimony about Noah's character and skill eased him, and Tina's desire for release made the decision easier. Do what you must. Noah nodded. He raised his hand toward Tina's head. A yellow gem appeared on his wrist, rotating slowly, bathing his skin in soft light. The moment he lifted his hand, Tina froze. Thin, flickering lines of yellow cosmic energy traced across her face. It was the sign of her mind preparing to enter Maud Wyrie. Only this time, she did not actually slip into the full chaotic state. Chapter 24, Mutation, Movement in the System Backpack. The power of the Mind Stone flowed from Noah's palms straight into Tina's head. Yellow light wrapped around her, and her body froze. Gilgamesh and Ajak, standing nearby, watched her with tense faces. Noah kept his hand raised, but his consciousness had already slipped deep into Tina's memories, following the Mind Stone's current. Inside Tina's mind, The Mind Stone's power took the shape of Noah and projected him into a vast, mysterious inner space where all her memories were stored. It wasn't a physical cortex so much as a sea of floating fragments, colorful clouds of experience drifting in the void. Each fragment held moments of Tina's life, preserved perfectly and circulating in her unique memory world. Noah drifted through that sea. He could see the images within the fragments as if watching film, his own presence in one of the nearest pieces, surely from their first meeting. He scanned for the residual memories that must be the root of the wiry symptoms. They were hard to miss. A ringing wrongness made them stand out. Above the memory sea, a black, shredded mist hovered, twisted like smoke caught in a storm. These wisps bordered normal memories, but would not integrate with them. They kept colliding against the healthy fragments, like a tide trying to break through a dam. So this is it, Noah thought, and rose toward the dark mist. Up close, the fragments inside the black cloud became clear, Tina's final moments on her former planet. Mountains crumbled, the ground split, people screamed and ran. Tina's point of view was frozen. She could only look, numb, as devastation unfolded. Then Noah watched, from her perspective, the birth of new celestials. A hand blotting out the sky, a flash, and then nothing. Tina and the other Eternals were consumed in the planet's destruction, but from the memory it seemed the Celestials could revive them even after total annihilation. Noah could not make out the god's face, only an enormous hand that obscured sky and earth before everything went black. That would have to do, Noah decided. He gathered the Mind Stone's power and began to sweep away the dark fragments. The stone's influence ate at the black mist. The smoke melted like ice against flame. The corrupted memories went fuzzier, like footage being fast-forwarded. Then, just as the warped fragments reached the scene of the god's emergence, something unexpected happened. A strange, ancient power burst from the memory and struck back at the Mind Stone. Noah frowned. The force was not Tina's. It carried an older, deeper origin. It broke free from the memory space and plunged toward reality, toward him. He prepared to block it with the Mind Stone, but felt something else first. An item in a specific slot of his system backpack, knocking repeatedly against the slot's edge. He was puzzled and, almost reflexively, opened the backpack's restriction. Though he existed now only as an energy construct of the Mind Stone, Noah could still access the system panel. Its link to his soul and consciousness transcended form. He had only a heartbeat to act before the surge reached him. The system backpack materialized, and a black stream of light leapt from it toward Noah. He watched as the beam coalesced and realized what it was. The Dark Star Thresh experience card, the trump he'd summoned not long ago, had manifested. The card took the blast intended for Noah. On its face, the black hole in Thresh's palm seemed to become real, a gravitational maw. The incoming power and the remaining black memory fragments were dragged into it as if by a vacuum. Noah could almost hear Darkstar Thresh's low, oppressive laughter, or perhaps that was the card speaking, but he did not stand idle. He still used the Mind Stone's power to guard Tina's original memories. He would not let her become a hollow shell after he left. As the stream poured into the card, the corrupted memories and the unknown energy were absorbed. The card hummed quietly, then went inert. Noah drew it back to him. He could still feel faintly Thresh's satisfied whisper. Such consuming power, utterly delicious. Noah stood amid the quieted memory sea. Tina's true memories remained intact under the Mind Stone's protection. The taint had been sealed away in the now dormant experience card. Far beyond, at the edge of the universe, in a desolate expanse where life could not go, a colossal god stood like a mountain of existence. Its body was vast enough to fill a galaxy. Its presence was both majestic and terrible, impossible to behold directly. In the palm of its hand, a newly born star glowed, nurtured there and growing brighter, its light pushing back the surrounding darkness. With that infant sun, the galaxy gained warmth and hint of life. The god paused and turned its head, looking toward a certain region with a gaze that seemed to pierce all distance. But something obscured the view, a veil of mist that blocked what it sought. Very strange, it thought. Perhaps I should seek Aurelion the Judge. Chapter 325, Changes to Darkstar Experience Cards. Inside Tina's sea of memories, Noah focused the power of the Mind Stone. trying to excise a malignant memory fragment. The fragment contained images of the Celestials and reacted violently to the Infinity Stone's influence, pushing back with an energy that directly opposed the Mind Stone. Noah suspected that the force sprang from the Celestials whose likenesses populated the memory. Perhaps they sensed they were being observed from the far edges of the universe and counterattacked, much as he had once done at the banquet. If that celestial energy had erupted inside the Sea of Memories, Tina's memories would have been shredded instantly. It might even have caused catastrophic harm outside of her mind. Noah barely had time to marshal a defense when the Dark Star Thresh trial card in his backpack suddenly shot out and absorbed the celestial power. Noah stared at the card, baffled. System items with will of their own? He'd seen the Magus hat gain sentience and become a pet, but that was a complete magic item. This was only a trial card, temporary, 30 minutes at most. Yet as he examined it, the timer display confused him. The card's original 30-minute limit had become an hour. When had that happened? Only one possibility came to mind. The card had absorbed the celestial energy. Surprise spread across Noah's face. Doubling the trial duration was no small thing. For an entity like Dark Star Thresh, an extra half hour of transformation could change everything. Noah held the card and felt the pull of an alien voice at the edge of his thoughts. The card seemed to be nudging his imagination. With an extra hour, he might devour entire galaxy clusters. The suggestion shocked him. He hadn't meant to think that, and it was unsettling how easily the card influenced his mind. He remembered the Tom Kench trial card from before. When he'd used it, his thinking had drifted toward the greedy, devouring mindset of that ancient demon. Fortunately, that transformation was brief and protected by the system's A-level beginner safeguards. This was different. The Dark Star Thresh card operated on a far higher level. Just holding it, Noah could almost hear Thresh's low, amused chuckle at the back of his head. If he transformed, he might actually become Thresh for the card's duration and only revert when the hour elapsed. The thought made his skin crawl. What if, while under Thresh's influence, he casually destroyed Earth? Waking to find his home gone because of his own hands was an image he couldn't bear. Still, he couldn't dismiss the card's usefulness. If the Celestials were truly a threat, if eliminating or preventing their emergence on Earth drew the attention of a judge like Aurelion, he might need Thresh's power to stand against them. The recent incident hinted at something else. The trial card had reacted directly to celestial energy. Celestials create stars and planets. The Dark Star devours them. That opposition could be the key. As he debated, Noah felt a yellow glow coalesce around his hand. The Mind Stone's mental shielding, if he channeled it, should protect his mind from Thresh's influence. The idea settled his nerves somewhat. If he used the Mind Stone's power while holding or activating the card, he might retain control. Another thought followed from the celestial energy they'd just encountered. If a distant memory image of a celestial could grant the card 30 extra minutes, what might a real, living celestial do? Even the embryonic celestial, rumored to lie in Earth's core, still unhatched and unconsumed, would be immensely powerful. A single finger would dwarf mountains. Harvesting such power could boost the card dramatically, but it would also grievously anger the Celestials. Noah sighed inwardly and decided he needed time to think. He slipped the trial card back into his backpack and released the Mind Stone's hold on the Sea of Memories. The yellow mental shield faded, and under its protection, the Celestial's impact had caused no lasting harm. The colorful Sea of Memories calmed once more, dreamlike and undisturbed. With the dark mist gone, Tina's Mari would not recur, at least, not for now. When Noah opened his eyes, he saw Tina in Gilgamesh's arms. Gilgamesh watched her anxiously, and Ajax stood nearby, observing as well. By then, Noah had cleared away the impurities the Celestials had missed in the Sea of Memory. From now on, Maud Wyrie would no longer appear to Tina. Of course, the Sea of Memory might not actually exist. It was merely an abstract scene projected by the Mind Stone when Noah used it. If someone else used the Mind Stone to enter another person's mind, they might see a memory library or something else entirely. Those specifics didn't matter. Noah had handled what needed handling. In reality, Noah lowered his hand. The yellow energy dissipated, and the gem that had been floating on his wrist vanished in a flash. The Mind Stone returned to Noah's laboratory, something he'd been doing more often lately. When he needed it, he used the Space Stone to bring the Mind Stone to him. When he didn't, he returned it to the lab for study. Ajak noticed and, hopeful, walked over. "Noah, did you succeed? How is Tina?" Gilgamesh fixed his gaze on Noah, waiting for the answer he wanted. "You can ask her directly. She should be waking up now." Noah nodded toward Tina. Their eyes turned to her. Tina's eyebrows twitched a few times, and then she slowly opened her eyes. "Tina, how do you feel? Do you feel better?" Gilgamesh immediately helped her sit up, voice full of concern. A strange light flickered in Tina's eyes. She took a deep breath and spoke softly, relief and ease in her voice like he'd never heard before. "I feel unbelievably light, as if a huge stone that's weighed on my heart for years has been lifted. Now, I won't fall into Madwiri anymore?" Tina looked at Noah, hope and nervousness mixed on her face. "No, the things that caused Madwiri to appear have been cleared. You won't enter it again." Noah nodded. Tina's face finally relaxed. Tears of joy filled her eyes. Gilgamesh, visibly relieved and happy for her, reached out to hug her. Ajak thanked Noah too. "It's nothing," Noah waved. With the Mind Stone, it had been a small task, and he had gained some benefits and a huge favor in return. The Eternals, especially Gilgamesh and Tina, were intensely grateful. For centuries, they had lived under the shadow of Madwari. To avoid its onset, they had hidden themselves away in this desolate place. Gilgamesh invited Noah to stay for lunch as a gesture of thanks. Noah and Ajak ate with Gilgamesh and Tina in their small house. "All right, then I won't head back at noon," Noah had said. Inside Gilgamesh's mud house, he was sitting at the table, talking to Lysandra on the phone. "Is that your family?" Gilgamesh asked, as he set a plate of roasted meat on the table. From the outside, the dwelling looked dilapidated, a little mud house with a leaky roof, but inside it was a complete, well-equipped home. There were electrical appliances, a refrigerator, an oven, electric lights. The small tower Noah had seen outside must be a wind turbine. Pots, bowls, and plates were all ceramic wares fired by Gilgamesh, and the furniture looked handcrafted. The aromas rising from the dishes were richer than any restaurant food Noah had had lately, though still not quite as refined as Lysandra's cooking. Noah hadn't expected someone who seemed so rugged to have such a delicate, domestic side. Perhaps centuries of caring for Tina had changed him. Love did that. "Don't worry," Gilgamesh said with a smile as he placed the final dish on the table. "My cooking isn't bad." He also produced a brown ceramic bottle. Noah heard the gurgling inside, some kind of drink or wine. "This is the mead Odin taught us," Gilgamesh said, pouring into everyone's cups. "Odin taught me to thank us for driving Laufey's army out of Tunsberg back then. You know who Odin is, right? I heard his son Thor has come to Earth recently. I still remember the last time I saw Thor. He was just a little kid toddling around." Tunsberg, Gilgamesh mentioned, was a town in southeastern Norway, one of the oldest in the country. Given when the Eternals arrived on Earth, they could have crossed paths with Laufey's invasion. Noah sniffed the mead. It smelled of fermented corn, similar to the wine he'd tasted at an Asgardian banquet. He used his magic to sense the cup and relaxed. It wasn't brewed with anyone's saliva. He remembered a movie scene where someone claimed to chew corn kernels to ferment wine just to disgust Kingo, the U.S. Eternal. Apparently that had been for shock value and not real. Tina usually drank only fruit juice to keep her mind stable and avoid Madwiri. Now that the condition was gone, she could drink alcohol if she wanted. Gilgamesh paused for a moment as he poured, caught between habit and this new freedom, and poured only a tiny cup for Tina out of caution. Tina looked a little shy, then smiled and accepted the small cup. She sipped, closed her eyes, and a bright color came to her cheeks. "It's good," she murmured. Noah took a cup as well. The mead was sweet and warming, the sort of simple, honest flavor that fit this humble household. They ate, laughed softly, and the room filled with an easy, domestic warmth. After the meal, Gilgamesh stood and cleared his throat. "Noah, we owe you more than I can say. If there's ever anything you need." "No need," Noah said, standing to help. "I'm glad I could help." Gilgamesh smiled, but insisted. He went to a low shelf and took down a small brown ceramic cup, one of his own pieces. "I made this," he said, pressing it into Noah's hand. "A small thing, a thank you." Noah turned the cup over in his hand, feeling the weight and the imperfect glaze. It was a simple, honest gift, made with care. For a moment they all stood there, 4 people in a little mud house on a windswept hill, sharing a meal and the quiet relief that something long feared was finally over. Gilgamesh's gratitude was plain, and Tina's smile was steady. Noah accepted their thanks without fanfare. The Mind Stone went back to the lab, the sea of memory had been cleansed, and in that small house the Eternals took a first clear breath of normalcy. Chapter 327, Ajak intends to be a riddler. Ajak, do you need something from us this time? Gilgamesh asked, sitting down beside Tina. He finally had a chance to ask why Ajak had come. Earlier, he had been too occupied with Tina's Maud Wyrie to question her guest. I do, Ajak replied. There's something very important I need to discuss with you all, and I intend to reassemble the Eternals. Gilgamesh and Tina exchanged a look. They had not expected Ajak to talk about gathering the Eternals again after so many years apart. Could something that important have happened? Both felt a prick of unease under the surface of curiosity. Ajak, what exactly happened? Is our mission over, and Orisham the judge ordering us to withdraw from Earth? Gilgamesh asked. For Gilgamesh and the other Eternals, their understood purpose on Earth had always been to deal with the deviants. Back in Babylon, they had thought the deviants eradicated and their task done. Even so, they had never left Earth without an explicit order from Orisham. In truth, their mission had never been as simple as killing deviants. They had remained on the planet because no recall had ever come. Over the centuries, internal strife and outside influences had scattered them, each Eternal choosing to live in seclusion in some corner of the world. Ajak's suggestion to reunite them now caught both Gilgamesh and Tina off guard. Tina, especially, had just emerged from the shadow of Maud Wyrie and was eager to explore the changed world with Gilgamesh. The long isolation had cost her centuries of history. She dreaded any news that might shatter the fragile peace she had found. An order from the Celestials to leave was the sort of thing she feared most. Ajak hesitated, weighing whether to tell them everything immediately. After a moment, she spoke. Earth is facing an unprecedented crisis. We must work together to protect this planet and all life on it. A crisis? Gilgamesh frowned. But Ajak, didn't you always tell us not to interfere in Earth affairs? Tina nodded. It was the question on both their minds. This crisis concerns us Eternals in a very direct way, Ajak said, her expression steady and resolute. That is why we must act. Then what is it? Gilgamesh pressed. Seeing Ajak's unwillingness to answer fully, he couldn't help himself. Why not tell us now? Ajak smiled faintly. I can't explain the details yet. Once everyone is gathered, I'll explain everything. What? Ajak, stop being so mysterious. It's urgent. Tell us now. Gilgamesh snapped. He was impatient with riddles. Gilgamesh, don't rush, Ajak said calmly. There are some things I can only reveal when everyone is present, things all of you must hear together. Gilgamesh realized he could argue until he was hoarse and get nowhere. He changed tack. Who will you look for first? If it's dangerous, I suggest we find Icarus. Besides Tina and me, he's the strongest fighter, and he can fly. I could use that advantage. No, Ajak said, setting down her fork and looking at him. I'm not going to Icarus first. He is no longer on our side. Both Gilgamesh and Tina frowned in unison. They had expected disagreement, but not that. Ajak, what do you mean? What happened to Icarus? Gilgamesh asked. Noah, who had been eating in silence at the table, put his knife and fork down and intervened. This morning, he said flatly, your friend tried to kill Ajak and planned to frame the deviants. Both Gilgamesh and Tina stared at him. What? That's impossible, they said, disbelief written across their faces. They had known Icarus for millennia. Even when tempers flared, it had been shouting matches, not murder. Icarus had always seemed the model soldier, obedient to Orisham and to Ajak. The idea that he would attempt to kill their leader defied everything they believed about him. Under their stares, Ajak nodded slowly. Why would he do that? Gilgamesh asked, baffled. It's connected to what I told him this morning, Ajak replied. He couldn't accept it and tried to kill me. Fortunately, Noah arrived in time and stopped him. Noah's composure didn't change as he said it. I defeated him, he added simply. He's no match for me when I fight seriously. Silence fell over the dining table. Gilgamesh and Tina sat, digesting the shock of Ajak's words. Only the clinking of cutlery went on. Noah resumed eating, taking in the flavors of the food in front of him. It was the first time Noah had tasted this sort of prepared meal. The food was good. Gilgamesh's cooking had a quality to it that surprised him. Even though Gilgamesh lived far from human settlements, his place still had meat and vegetables on hand. Noah wondered where they came from. Did Gilgamesh occasionally travel great distances to gather supplies? Given Gilgamesh's robust physical condition, a trip of hundreds of thousands of kilometers now and then seemed possible. Ajak said nothing more for the moment, leaving the two to sit with the knowledge that the mission they'd taken for granted for centuries had suddenly become more complicated, and that one of their oldest comrades might have turned against them. In the end, Ajak still didn't tell Gilgamesh and Tina everything. She insisted on waiting until everyone had gathered before revealing the full truth. She was uncertain. She wanted to know whether anyone else besides Icarus would agree with his stance. After Ajak finished speaking, a heavy silence settled over them for a few moments. It didn't last long. Gilgamesh and Tina soon composed themselves. Icarus's behavior had given them a lot to think about, but Tina had only just recovered from the Mod Wiry, and they owed it to themselves to enjoy this hard-won moment of peace. Gilgamesh took a deep breath. Ajak, if you want to wait until everyone's here to tell us everything, we'll respect that. You must have your reasons. Tina nodded. Curiosity and doubt filled her mind, but she agreed that unity would be paramount for the crisis ahead. During the evening, the Eternals shared much about their history and nature with Noah, helping him understand the ancient, secretive race that had watched humanity for so long. Gilgamesh and Tina were particularly curious about how Noah had defeated Icarus. They peppered him with questions about his experiences and the source of his power. The Eternal knew humans were not naturally capable of such feats. Someone who could overcome Icarus ought not to be a mere mortal. Noah couldn't tell them the truth about his system, of course, so he gave them a different answer. Kamar Taj. He claimed his power came from training at that hidden organization. Kamar Taj, Gilgamesh said, frowning thoughtfully. The name rang a bell. Perhaps one of his companions had mentioned it before. Tina leaned forward, interested. It sounds mysterious. I haven't heard of it either. The Eternal had arrived on Earth long before groups like Kamartaj came into being, and they'd never taken much interest in human institutions. Their concern had always been protecting humanity from the deviants. So it wasn't surprising most of them didn't know about a reclusive order of human mages. Still, Ajak heard Noah name it and recognized the lie. Kamartaj wasn't powerful enough, she thought, to produce someone capable of fighting Celestials. But seeing the curiosity on Gilgamesh and Tina's faces, she decided to explain what little she knew. Kamartaj is an old, secretive order of human mages, Ajak said. It was founded by people who mastered certain deep forms of magic and made a pact with powerful dimensional beings to access mystical energies. Like us, they live apart from the world and rarely show their power. Their role is to guard Earth against dangerous dimensional entities. There's actually an organization like that? We should visit them sometime. I want to meet these mages, Gilgamesh said with genuine interest. Then he glanced at Noah and grinned. Noah, how about a spar after dinner? Let me see what a Kamartaj mage can do. Tina had regained her cheer after the mod worry faded, and Gilgamesh's mood had lightened with hers. Ajak opened her mouth, about to object that it wasn't very polite, when Noah had already accepted. All right, Noah said, smiling. I'd like to see the strongest warrior among the Eternal. Among the Eternal, Icarus was often considered the most powerful overall. Flight, long-range laser projection, and impressive durability. But in raw, brute strength, Gilgamesh was unmatched. His burly, muscular frame made Icarus look lean by comparison. Gilgamesh's excitement ramped up when Noah agreed. Good, no time to waste. Let's go now, Gilgamesh said, standing. They'd mostly finished their meal. Tina and Gilgamesh had eaten the most, and their appetites matched their better moods. For safety, Gilgamesh led Noah to a wide-open space away from the house. With Tina's mod wiry cured, they were less worried about accidental harm, but the place still held memories and sentiment. Gilgamesh planted himself at one end of the clearing and began stretching his wrists and loosening his joints. You better be ready, Noah. I hit hard, he warned, twisting his hands. Use everything you've got. I want to see the Eternal's strongest, Noah replied. He felt the magic and runic energies within him rising, reinforcing his body. Gilgamesh's grin widened, eager for combat. He spread his hands and drew in cosmic energy. It coalesced around his fists and forearms into heavy, glowing gauntlets. Noah answered in turn with the gestures of Kamartaj, at least the version he gave them, concentrating until an energy longsword formed in his grip. He had claimed Kamartaj training. A visible, arcane blade would make the claim more believable. A sword? You're going to fight me in close quarters? I thought Kamartaj mages were supposed to be spellcasters, Gilgamesh said, puzzled as he eyed the blade. I am a mage, Noah replied, adopting a sword stance, but I specialize in close combat. I invested little in ranged light spells. Most of my training went into strength and stamina. Chapter 329. Discuss. A melee mage? Kamartaj keeps getting more interesting, Gilgamesh said, an excited grin spreading across his face. The idea of a mage who fought up close clearly appealed to him. He dropped into a fighting stance, as if daring Noah to make the first move. Noah twirled the longsword in his hand. The blade traced a clean arc through the air, leaving a ribbon of blue magic energy in its wake. Kamartaj's crafted weapons usually glowed orange, the same color as an Eternal's cosmic energy, but Noah didn't rely on the Vishanti's power. He channeled his own. Hence the sword was blue. They exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. Noah took a step forward and then surged toward Gilgamesh. He moved so fast he kicked up plumes of sand. As he closed the distance, a layer of wind technique wrapped around him like a cloak. Gilgamesh inhaled deeply. His muscles tensed. Cosmic energy gathered in his hands and bloomed as faint golden lines across his body. Noah's speed was unnerving, so Gilgamesh poured out his power, bracing for impact. The wind screamed as the blue longsword, charged with wind technique, came down in a slash. Clang! Gilgamesh snapped his arm up with a speed that belied his bulk, blocking the blow with a golden bracer. Sparks flew where sword and energy met. The force of the strike drove Gilgamesh's feet slightly into the sand. For a moment he wondered if Noah was really a mage at all, or some kind of warrior in mage's clothing. Before Gilgamesh could counter, Noah adjusted, twisting his wrist and launching an even fiercer assault. Gusts of wind technique blurred before Gilgamesh's eyes. Relying on combat instinct, he swung his arms to meet the onslaught, beating back the torrent like a sudden storm. Still, a few threads of sword energy slipped past his bracer, pierced the thinner cosmic energy over his chest, and carved a shallow wound into him. Seizing the opening as Noah's attack rhythm paused, Gilgamesh unleashed a packed punch, rage and raw strength concentrated into one blow. Boom! His fist smashed into Noah's sword in a flash of light and impact. But Noah had seen it coming. He planted the blade, absorbed the hit, and used the rebound to vault backward, creating space. He didn't stop in midair. With fluid grace, he readied the sword, then whipped it forward in a sweeping arc that birthed a howling blade storm. The sword whined, tore up sand, and shredded it into dust where it passed. Gilgamesh responded without hesitation. He thrust a golden fist into the air, a powerful counterforce that blew the sword storm apart. As the tempest disintegrated, shards of sharp energy sprayed in all directions. Gilgamesh crossed his arms to shield his head, parrying the residual shards, but many pierced the outer layer of his cosmic energy, raking his flesh. Small cuts peppered his body. Golden blood beaded and trickled down. When the energies died away, they found themselves more or less back where they had started, but the contrast between them was obvious. Noah landed gracefully, toes kissing the earth, wind technique still whispering around him like a practiced swordsman. Gilgamesh stood a little worse for wear. The sword wound in his chest smarted, and his armor and hair were disordered. Besides the larger cut, the scattered sword energies had left numerous shallow slashes along his sides and arms. Watching from a distance, Ajak and Tina had seen the whole exchange. Ajak looked composed, as if she'd expected something like this. She had not, however, predicted that Noah would rely on swordsmanship rather than the overwhelming force he had used against Ikaris. Tina, sitting beside her, was visibly upset at seeing Gilgamesh wounded. If she still carried Madwari, she might have gone berserk. Madwari was gone, but her emotions remained fragile after so many years of torment. A golden long spear flickered into being in her hands. "Tina, calm down," Ajak said, taking her friend's hand. "They're sparring. Have you forgotten my power? Gilgamesh will be fine." Tina drew a few deep breaths and slowly steadied. Ajak was right. This was a controlled duel. The wounds were superficial and could be healed by Ajak later. On the battlefield, Noah raised his magic sword. The blue filaments that formed the blade showed several broken lines where Gilgamesh's punch had impacted, cracks like a dented iron sword. It wasn't fatal. Noah channeled his magic into the blade, and the torn lines knitted back together, the weapon restored. The repeated slashes had already infused the sword with wind technique energy. When unleashed, that energy would reveal the technique's pinnacle, its ultimate secret, last breath. Chapter 330, Cut Down. "Come, Noah, show me your moves," Gilgamesh called. He felt the powerful aura radiating from Noah and knew the next strike would be devastating. Ignoring the bleeding cuts that streaked his body, Gilgamesh began to gather every scrap of cosmic energy he could muster. He couldn't help but wish for his battle armor. If he had it now, those sword energies might not have torn him up so badly. The Eternals' battle armors were custom-made, formidable gear. Not only did they offer tremendous protection, they amplified cosmic energy and made each warrior's abilities far more potent. But that armor sat on the Eternal ship. There was no time to lament that now. He had to prepare to counter whatever offensive Noah launched. From Noah's earlier attacks, Gilgamesh already suspected he was outmatched, but he was not about to surrender. As an Eternal, he had pride and dignity. He would fight to the end. He took a steadying breath, set his stance, and braced for Noah's strike. He knew each of Noah's blows could be lethal, so he forced himself to focus without the slightest lapse. Noah watched Gilgamesh settle into his guard and tightened his grip on the longsword. Then, with a single step forward, he vanished from sight. Gilgamesh lost track of him. Noah's speed had blurred his figure into nothing. On alert, Gilgamesh heard a sharp whoosh from behind. He spun, preparing to block the attack and then counter, but before he could fully react, a brutal impact hammered into his crossed arms. The strike sliced upward from below with tremendous force. It lifted Gilgamesh off his feet and sent him hurtling into the air. Being rootless in midair was a miserable sensation for a warrior who couldn't fly. Without contact with the ground, he couldn't stabilize his body. He struggled to regain control, knowing Noah would seize the opportunity. Sure enough, a gust of wind surged up from the ground toward him. Gilgamesh saw it coming, but still reeling from the prior blow, couldn't respond in time. The wind swept past him. It was Noah, surrounded by sword energy. He slashed, and Gilgamesh's armor, shaped from his cosmic energy, shattered like paper under the force of the blade. Noah became wind again and flashed through the air, each swing precise and merciless. Each attack pinned Gilgamesh in place. He hung midair, powerless against the barrage. By the time the final strike, the last breath, landed, the pressure was too much. Gilgamesh could no longer hold himself up and fell, crashing to the ground and kicking up a storm of dust. When it was clear the fight was over, Ajak and Tina hurried to his side. Tina rushed in and crouched beside the fallen Eternal, checking on him with panicked hands. Noah descended as well, releasing the hilt of his magic longsword. The blade dissolved into motes of magic and drifted away. Cough! Cough! Gilgamesh hacked up sand and grit, then laughed weakly when he saw Tina's alarm. Despite the savage-looking thrashing he'd taken, his wounds were not fatal, just a few cuts a centimeter or so deep. They would have killed an ordinary human, but to a celestial they were superficial. It was also because Noah had held back. He had no intention of killing him. This had been a sparring match, not a fight to the death. Noah had relied mainly on the magic he had channeled into his body, not on the Infinity Stones or the Resolve Rune. After the duel, he now had a clearer estimate of Gilgamesh's strength, notably more powerful than a normal unraged Hulk and wielding substantial cosmic energy. If Gilgamesh had his battle armor, his power might jump another tier. The Hulk Noah meant was the non-enraged version. The movie Hulk's strength increased with rage, though not as wildly as in the comics. "Tina, don't overdo it. I'm fine," Gilgamesh said, smiling at her frantic fussing. He knew Noah had restrained himself. If every blow had carried the full force that shattered his defenses, the sword energy would have torn him apart long ago. Ajak reached them then and knelt, assessing the cuts. She placed her palm on Gilgamesh, and a warm pulse of cosmic energy flowed out from her hand. One by one, the wounds knit closed. Tina watched, anxiety easing as the healing light did its work. In moments, Gilgamesh felt the warmth running through him and found his strength returning. He pushed himself up to his feet. "Noah," he said, looking at the other man with genuine respect, "you're very powerful." For a human to reach such a level and have bested him in a match earned Gilgamesh's admiration. Noah's skill and strength in battle left him humbled every time. Though the fight had been heavy on swordplay, it had made one thing clear: Noah's power was not beneath his own. "It's a pity I didn't get to see any wondrous magic," Gilgamesh added with a rueful shake of his head, wondering whether he had been too weak to last long enough to provoke anything beyond sword techniques. Chapter 331, Portal and Departure. Magic? Then let me show you something. Noah's words prompted Gilgamesh to make a small wish. For a moment, Gilgamesh wondered what Noah had in mind. Another fight? Ajak had already healed his wounds. He was more than capable of sparring again. If Noah wanted to test him, he wouldn't refuse. Noah had no intention of fighting. He reached out, traced a circle in the air, and a blue teleport portal bloomed beneath Gilgamesh's feet. The sudden change threw Gilgamesh off balance. "What the?" he started to shout, but the ground dropped away. He fell into the portal and felt a dizzying rush as the world smeared into motion. Tina and Ajak gaped in surprise. Above the first portal, another opened, and Gilgamesh popped out of it, looking windblown but unharmed. Before he could gather himself, he fell again through the upper portal and dropped back into the lower one. "What is this thing?" he yelled, voice breaking into ragged syllables as he was flung back and forth. He looped between portals endlessly. Each time he emerged from the upper portal, there was barely time to react before the ground portal yanked him back. He tried to use the cosmic energy in his body to thrust himself free in midair, but no matter which way he fired, the bottom portal seemed to have a will of its own and caught him precisely every time. "Oh, no. I've seen enough. You can let me down now," Gilgamesh called after dozens of tumbles, breathless and more than a little embarrassed. At that, the lower portal vanished. Gilgamesh adjusted his posture quickly. He'd already made a spectacle of himself and wasn't about to fall flat in front of witnesses. He landed on solid ground and squared his shoulders. It was worth noting that descending between two teleport portals wasn't like free-falling through open air. The speed didn't increase as it would in a vacuum. Otherwise, as in the Doctor Strange movie, Loki would have fallen through the sanctum's floor after 30 minutes of plummeting. Noah waved and closed the upper portal, smiling at Gilgamesh. "That was Kamar Taj's magic," he said. "Impressive," Gilgamesh muttered, rubbing his waist. He was relieved Noah hadn't chosen to fight him with sorcery. The experience had left him restless, strong, but with nowhere to use that strength, and oddly humiliated by the spectacle. The sparring ended there. Tina had wanted a turn as well. Her hands had been itching after watching Noah's swordplay. Noah welcomed the challenge. He was curious about the Valkyrie's skill, but both Gilgamesh and Ajak vetoed the idea. Tina had only recently recovered from the Mod Wyrie. She shouldn't be pushed into a hard fight so soon. So Tina's offer went unused, and the group returned to the small dirt house. Gilgamesh and Tina packed their bags. They had decided to join Ajak in gathering the other Eternals scattered around the globe. Noah lingered, watching them, thinking through his next moves. He didn't intend to travel with them. His original goal had been to escort Ajak to the Eternals, ready for combat. Now that Ajak had reunited with Gilgamesh and Tina, Gilgamesh the strongest among the Eternals present, and Tina, freed from the Mod Wyrie, whole again with formidable combat skills and superhuman strength, Ajak no longer faced the risk of a sudden attack from Akaris. Noah felt the Eternals could handle the next steps for a while. Ajak would be responsible for recalling their scattered comrades, explaining the truth of their mission, and rallying them to oppose the Celestials. After they had gathered, Noah planned to rejoin them and deal with the Celestial at Earth's core. Beyond that, he suspected he would have to face top-tier beings from the Marvel cosmology. He hoped the Celestials would give him fair fights. one at a time. If they swarmed him at once, he wasn't sure Dark Star Thresh could handle it. "Noah, what are you going to do? Are you coming with us to Asia?" Ajak asked, walking over. "Are you planning to head to Asia first?" Noah answered. "I won't come along. Find me once you've gathered everyone." Ajak looked a little disappointed but understood. "All right, we'll follow the plan. If you need help, contact us anytime." "Okay, it's all packed, Ajak. We can leave whenever you're ready." Gilgamesh set several bundles on the ground, and Tina added a few more items. "Then let's go," Ajak said. "How are we going to travel? Walk all the way?" Gilgamesh asked. Their hut was far from any human settlement. Even with the strength of two Eternals, it would take ages to get to civilization, especially with Ajak along. Ajak frowned, thinking through the problem. Noah stepped forward. "I'll give you a ride." "Thank you, Noah," Ajak replied. Noah opened a teleport portal wide enough for three to walk through side by side. One by one, they stepped into the shimmering doorway. Gilgamesh and Tina cast a last look back at the little house, then followed Ajak into the portal. Chapter 332, The Eternals Become Big Stars. Noah finally sent 3 of the Eternals to the city of Perth. Known as the most isolated city in the world, Perth has no other major city within a 1,800-kilometer radius. It also happened to be the closest place to Gilgamesh's old mud house, and, crucially, it had an international airport, so Noah chose it as their staging point. On the outskirts of the city, Ajak and the others ran into a practical problem. None of them had the passports and visas needed to board a plane. Gilgamesh did have money. He hadn't just looted supplies, but travel documents were a different matter. Ajak's passports and visas were back in America, left at her residence, and Gilgamesh and the others truly had none. Australia hadn't even had regular air travel when they'd first arrived in that line. Ajak asked Noah for help. After a moment's thought, Noah delegated the matter to Lysandra. Paperwork like this was trivial for her, and she quickly arranged everything the 3 of them needed. With that sorted, the 3 Eternals bade Noah farewell and boarded a flight to Asia. Their primary objective was to locate Kingo, who was active in India, then continue on to London to rendezvous with Circe and Sprite. Ajak didn't even need the celestial sphere to find Kingo. Since leaving the team, he had risen to stardom in Bollywood, becoming a household name and the lead in countless films. To avoid suspicion about his unaging appearance over decades, Kingo cultivated an elaborate family backstory. Whenever an identity threatened to attract scrutiny, he would retire it and re-emerge as that persona's son, continuing his public career. The family's similar looks were explained away by his convincing performances and a mythicized family bloodline, a story Kingo told so well it glazed over any doubts. Over time, this method let him preserve his secret and sustain a top-tier acting career. Among the Eternals, Kingo enjoyed the highest standing in human society, so finding him first would greatly aid their mission. After the Eternals departed, Noah opened a teleportation gate back to New York. Gathering the Eternals was Ajak's responsibility now. Noah was to wait. Once home, he replayed the sparring session with Gilgamesh and felt a twinge of regret. If he'd had any mission attempts left when they sparred, that match might have triggered a mission. Earlier that day, he'd already used up his attempts, trying to see if Warwick could accept missions remotely. Still, there would be other chances. 10 Eternals could mean 10 missions, and so he set the regret aside and turned to other tasks. He had plenty to do: spaceship modifications, Hydra, and the Reality Stone. Odin had not yet sent any information about the Reality Stone, and Noah had entrusted Hydra-related matters to Fury, so he headed to the underground laboratory to research and modify the spaceship with Lysandra. Spaceship cannon assembly in progress. Far away, on an Alaskan ice field, a colossal beast unlike anything native to Earth came to a halt. Its skin was a blue-gray that stood out against the snow. Any Eternal who saw it would have recognized it for what it was: a deviant. When Noah had previously destroyed several deviants during the rescue of Ajak, he had wondered why the leader-level deviant from the movie hadn't appeared. In truth, that leader had broken free from the ice along with a pack of wolf-like deviants and had helped slaughter an offshore oil drilling team. As a leader-class deviant, it possessed dangerous evolutionary abilities. It could absorb the cosmic energy of Eternals and use that energy to evolve, even appropriating or altering Eternal's abilities. It also had extremely sharp senses. When Ikaris and Ajak arrived, it had already detected them from the cave beneath the cliff and grown wary. It did not act until Noah approached. Although the mirror dimension could not change physical reality, this deviant sensed an overwhelming lethal aura long before Noah entered that dimension. Panic seized it. Ignoring the subordinates it had dragged with it, it fled through the cave's internal passage and burst out across the snow, limbs pumping as it ran for its life. The commotion that followed proved the deviant's judgment correct. Now it panted in the cold, certain for the first time in a long while that it had escaped the immediate danger. Unlike many of its kind, this deviant possessed high intelligence. After absorbing the life energy trapped in the ice and breaking free, its first impulse was to hunt the Eternals. It could not explain the depth of its hatred for them. The hostility seemed imprinted in its genes. Every time it sensed an Eternal's aura, a blind, irresistible killing urge surged up from its core. The quick absorption of life force had triggered a metamorphosis. The deviant's body grew larger and stronger, and it developed a new faculty, the ability to detect Eternals by scent, to track their aura across great distances. The enormous animal stood and stared in one direction, its focus absolute. It had picked up the presence of an Eternal not far away. Chapter 333, Eternal Phastos. After its evolution, one organ in the giant deviant had mutated, giving it a new sense. It could detect the Eternals, its enemies, imprinted in its genes. On the vast ice plain, the monstrous beast stood on the snow, 4 eyes fixed on a single direction. Its massive body, usually sprawled, was now fully upright, a towering form over 6 meters tall, imposing in the cold wind. It tested this new posture, then opened its enormous jaws and barked 2 rough syllables. Crow. Crow, that was the name the deviant called itself. In the original movie, Crow had only learned to speak after absorbing Ajak and Gilgamesh, and had gained Ajak's memories along with the cosmic energy. This time things had diverged. Noah had prevented Crow from absorbing Ajak's cosmic energy. Instead, Crow had received something else, raw life energy that let it break free of the ice. That energy had accelerated its evolution, greater intellect, a more powerful body, and the new ability to sense the Eternals. Since devouring fragile human beings, creatures that resembled the Eternals, Crow had picked up more than flesh. It assimilated names, scraps of language, and the memory traces of its prey. The 2 Eternals it had encountered earlier had also spoken like humans. The impression had stuck. Crow stared into the distance, thinking through its next move. Flashes of human memories flickered in its mind, how once easily slaughtered humans now wielded weapons that could threaten even a deviant, missiles, nuclear bombs. Those images taught Crow caution. Though strong, it could not ignore human war technology. So despite detecting an Eternal, Crow would not rush in headlong. It would be stealthy. Drawing too much attention might provoke human counterattacks or alert the Eternal to its presence. Instead, it formed a plan. In a hoarse, tearing voice it growled, "Kin," signaling its intention. First, it would find others of its kind. The pack it had led at the original ice lake had been abandoned. Those followers should be gone by now. Crow would gather a new group of deviants and use them to hunt the isolated Eternal it had sensed. Crow could sense both Eternals and other deviants. After the strange energy storm earlier, the creature felt seals breaking around the world. Other deviants were surfacing. As a leader-level deviant, Crow could command lesser ones. If it met equals, it would assert dominance. After one last look toward the Eternal's aura, Crow crouched, then bounded away toward a source of life energy, not toward the Eternal, but toward its own kind, to feed and evolve. For now, that was its mission. Thousands of kilometers away in Illinois, the Eternal Crow had sensed lived quietly in a North American city. Chicago, the United States' 3rd largest city, buzzed with energy and attention. One Eternal who had separated from his companions centuries ago had chosen this place to hide in plain sight, integrating into human society and living an ordinary life. Phastos, the Eternal in Chicago, was a researcher by trade. His ability resembled control over metal, but he preferred to apply it to invention rather than direct combat. He fought with the weapons he built. Phastos had been disillusioned by war and, only after Ajak persuaded him, had come to live here. He had found purpose, fallen in love, married, and adopted a child. He and his husband Ben had built a home and raised their son Jack. Phastos's marriage to Ben was ordinary in their world. In the United States, their union fit comfortably into the culture of freedom. Their house sat in a quiet neighborhood. From the outside, it looked unremarkable, but inside, it hid many secrets and defenses. On the front lawn, Ben was tossing a football with Jack. "Hey, Jack, be careful. Don't run into the road," Ben called, grabbing the ball as the boy darted toward the fence. Cars passed on the street. A moment's carelessness could mean disaster. Ben led Jack back through the gate, crouched, and patiently explained the dangers. Fastos worked in the garage, tinkering with Jack's small car, and glanced up with a smile at the domestic scene. Compared with his life as an eternal warrior, this peaceful routine suited him. On the radio and the television inside, news chatter drifted through the neighborhood, reports about superheroes and rising tensions. Earth felt like it was stirring. Fastos frowned at the reports, but wasn't overly alarmed. The house had been retrofitted with powerful protections. Even a missile strike would likely leave it intact. For now, that knowledge was comfort enough. Chapter 334, The Three Eternals' Journey to India. India, a densely populated country with deep religious traditions, is the world's second most populous nation. Outsiders often notice a variety of distinctive customs. Many people eat with their hands, use the right hand for eating and the left hand for personal hygiene. Observations like these are sometimes shaped by the country's wide gap between rich and poor and the variety of traditions practiced across regions. After finishing formalities at the Australian International Airport, Ajak, Gilgamesh, and Tina finally reached their destination, India. The flight had taken nearly 12 hours. When they stepped out at the airport, they looked up at the sky. It was night. Gilgamesh glanced at his watch. It still read 2 o'clock in the afternoon, set to Australian time. He set the watch aside and found a wall clock in the terminal showing the local time, 9:30 in the evening. "Ajak, what's the plan?" Gilgamesh asked, turning to their leader. "Do we go straight to look for King O, or find somewhere to stay and start tomorrow?" A 12-hour flight might tire ordinary people, but these three were eternals. Fatigue didn't bother them. Tina, who had been held in the Australian desert for years by Maud Wyrie and had only recently been able to travel, was especially eager. Everything looked new and exciting. Ajak considered for a moment. "Let's get a hotel for the night and look for Kingo in the morning." Gilgamesh and Tina agreed, and they left the airport to find the nearest hotel. Ajak paid for everything. She'd lived in America for many years and had her ways of handling money. Once their luggage was settled in the room, Gilgamesh and Tina could barely contain themselves and headed back out to explore India's nightlife. Ajak didn't stop them. There was no immediate threat from Ikaris, and she didn't need the other two at her side right away. It was a good opportunity for her to search the internet for information on Kingo. As a public figure in India, Kingo's schedule and recent activities should be easily traceable online. Ajak wanted to be prepared so they wouldn't be turned away by bodyguards. The streets outside the hotel were alive. Both sides of the avenue were lit with bright lights. Food stalls, shops, and entertainment venues thrummed with activity. People in colorful clothing flowed along the sidewalks and narrow lanes, creating a lively, unmistakably Indian scene. Gilgamesh and Tina strolled through it, taking it all in. "Gilgamesh, try this!" Tina exclaimed, eyes wide. She'd been drawn to a nearby food stall where a dark-skinned vendor sold a local snack. Rows of small, deep-fried, hollow balls sat on an iron plate, alongside trays of fillings and sauces. Gilgamesh wasn't tempted so much by the food itself as he was wary of the stall's hygiene. He caught a strong spice aroma, but also a faint, unpleasant smell that reminded him of sewage. He couldn't say why food being served in a busy street market should have that note to it, but Tina was already animatedly gesturing to the vendor. They didn't speak Hindi, so they had to pantomime what they wanted. The vendor, used to travelers on routes near the airport, had plenty of experience with this. He quickly understood, plucked a few of the hollow spheres into a small box, pressed a thumb-sized cavity into each, and filled them with a mixture of ingredients. Finally, he ladled on a tangy, dark sauce, the same sauce whose aroma had reached Gilgamesh, and handed them over. Ajak had exchanged some rupees at the airport and given the two a bundle to enjoy the evening. Gilgamesh paid the vendor a few notes. Tina dove in with relish. Gilgamesh took a cautious bite. The shell was satisfyingly crisp, the fillings blended into a lively mix of flavors, and the sauce added a sharp, unusual kick. But the faint, disagreeable odor he'd noticed lingered in his nose. He didn't want to dwell on what had caused it. Tina, unbothered, kept sampling different stalls. They wandered through the food street, tasting snacks, listening to music, watching street performers, and enjoying the bustle until late into the night. When they finally decided to head back to the hotel, they found themselves confronted by another local custom, one that would surprise them in a different way. Chapter 335, A Group That Doesn't Even Spare Lizards. Gilgamesh and Tina, two Eternals, were enjoying themselves on the streets of India. They had spent a long time isolated in the Australian desert, cut off from the wider world. Gilgamesh had at least been able to leave the sand and see the towns when he foraged for supplies, but Tina, bound by the Mod Wiry, had been almost completely confined. Her world reduced to that endless desert and a sky full of yellow sand. India's bright, crowded nights were a rare and welcome change for her. They stayed out until 2 or 3 in the morning, when most stalls and shops finally closed, then headed back to their hotel. Although the city was still alive despite the late hour, the route they took grew quieter and more secluded. Locals who knew the neighborhood warned that walking those alleys at night was risky, so risky that even a lizard wouldn't come through unscathed, and nobody could say for sure what caused the scars you sometimes saw on stray animals. But Gilgamesh and Tina were tourists, and as Eternals, they felt little real danger from ordinary humans. Still, as they walked home talking and laughing, several pairs of eyes in a dark corner watched them with naked greed and malice. The two battle-hardened Eternals noticed the stares but hardly cared. They assumed these were just ordinary thugs, not a real threat. Gilgamesh hoped only that the men wouldn't ruin their night. The ragged men stared and whispered, then 7 of them stepped out from a side alley. They wore sneers and carried sticks and knives. The sight of Tina, blonde and pale beside Gilgamesh, lit lecherous looks in their faces. In that part of the city, gender tensions could be ugly, and the hooligans made no secret of their intentions. To them, the foreigners were easy prey. Tina smiled and glanced at Gilgamesh, excitement in her eyes rather than fear. Ordinary people would have panicked at being surrounded, but the two Eternals saw the gang as little more than clowns. The men were momentarily thrown by the pair's calm. Some of them whispered again and pointed at Gilgamesh. They knew he looked strong and feared a one-on-one fight, but they outnumbered him and had weapons, so a few of them grew louder, demanding valuables and closing in. Gilgamesh patted Tina's hand, signaling her to stay put. "Let's see how hospitable the locals are," he said with a faint smile. They didn't understand the Hindi threats, but the intent was obvious. One thug swung a long stick at Gilgamesh. Crack! The stick hit Gilgamesh's raised arm and snapped in two. He offered them one last chance. "Leave now," he said plainly. The men understood the gesture, if not the words. Gilgamesh knocked the remaining half of the broken stick from his attacker's hand, grabbed the man by the collar, and lifted him up as a warning. That only angered the others. They surged forward with knives and clubs. Gilgamesh wasted no cosmic energy. This was not worth his full power. The man in his grip struggled and kicked, so Gilgamesh tossed him like a rag into the rushing crowd. The heavy man crashed into 3 of his companions and sent them sprawling. The remaining 3 pressed in closer, faces fierce. Gilgamesh extended his massive hand and slapped them one after another. Slap! Slap! The dull impacts echoed in the alley. The thugs rolled away, stunned and twitching, knocked out or at least badly winded. Tina, standing at his side, giggled at the sight as the alley fell suddenly quiet. Chapter 336. Indian movies always insert dance in unexpected places. Gilgamesh, the most powerful of the Eternals, had taken on a Batman-like persona in the back alleys of India. One slap from him sent a thug sprawling. If someone had already been knocked down by another thug, Gilgamesh walked over and slapped them again until they were out cold. Afterwards, he and Tina strolled back to the hotel laughing and chatting as if nothing had happened. On that quiet alley, 7 men lay in a childlike sleep. The next day, they were discovered stripped of all their belongings, robbed while unconscious. The police were called, but after examination, the officers found all 7 had severe head injuries. 3 lapsed into a vegetative state. The other 4 were reduced to incoherent babbling. The local force, preferring to avoid hassle, showed little interest in investigating who had knocked them out. When they learned the men had prior criminal records, they simply arrested them and moved on, treating it as a tidy resolution. Gilgamesh and Tina never learned any of that. They had already left the hotel with Ajak and were en route to a film studio in Bollywood. Their target, Kingo, was shooting there that day. Ajak had tracked Kingo's location online the day before, so they set off without delay. They used a string of public transport and along the way witnessed a startling sight: passengers clinging to the outside of a train because they couldn't get tickets. The riders dangled from the carriages, undaunted by the danger. Even Gilgamesh found himself admiring their courage. After some wandering, Ajak led the 2 Eternals into the studio where Kingo was filming. Normally, outsiders aren't allowed on set, but Ajak told the guard they were Kingo's university classmates and had come at his invitation. The ruse worked, and they were admitted. Upstairs, upbeat music filled the air. They followed it and found a lively dance number in full swing, a crowd of extras singing and moving in perfect choreography under bright lights and multiple cameras. Kingo stood in the middle of the group, the clear focus of the scene. He wore a gold and green costume that made Gilgamesh do a double take. The outfit looked strangely familiar. Before they could interrupt, a somewhat portly man in a suit approached them, hands clasped together in greeting. "Hello, I'm Karan Patel, Kingo's personal assistant." Ajak returned the greeting, and Gilgamesh glanced at him before asking with dry amusement, "Personal assistant? Like Alfred to Batman?" Karan chuckled. "I'm not that capable. I only manage Kingo's day-to-day affairs." He forced a smile and then added with reverence, "It's an honor to meet the great Eternals." Hearing him say that, the 3 exchanged surprised looks. On set, someone shouted, "Cut," and the dancers slowed. A makeup artist hurried over to touch up Kingo, but he waved her off the moment he saw his old companions waiting. "Hold on a sec. My university friends are here. I want to see them," he called, then walked straight to Ajak and the others. "Kingo, long time no see. Ajak, Gilgamesh, Tina." He greeted them warmly, then abruptly remembered Tina and her condition. He signaled to Karan. "Karan, tell everyone to keep it down, please. We need to be quiet." "You don't have to worry," Gilgamesh said. "Tina's mod wiry has been cured." Kingo looked shocked for a heartbeat and then broke into a relieved grin. "Really? When did this happen? Congratulations, Tina. We have to celebrate. You came all this way. Let me treat you." Gilgamesh explained. "Ajak's human friend helped. He's the one who cured Tina." "A human?" Kingo tilted his head, puzzled. "Do humans really have that ability?" Before he could press further, Ajak cut in. "Kingo, we'll talk about that later. We actually came for something else." Kingo nodded, and with Karan leading the way, escorted them to a quiet conference room. On the walk, he put an arm over Gilgamesh's shoulder and grinned. "Check out this costume I'm wearing." "It looks familiar," Gilgamesh said, puzzled. "Ha ha ha, this is your battle armor," Kingo said proudly. "I'm filming a movie called The Great Hero Gilgamesh. It's about your story." He punched Gilgamesh's shoulder, pleased as a child. Gilgamesh was momentarily speechless. "When will it be finished? I want to see it," Tina said, genuinely interested. "Soon," Kingo replied. "After this one, I'm planning films about others too, maybe Icarus next." He said it offhandedly, excited by the idea. At the mention of Icarus, the faces around him flickered with awkward expressions that Kingo didn't notice. They reached the conference room, and Ajak sat down, ready to explain why they'd come. Chapter 337, How the World is Changing. After Ajak and the others left the meeting with Kingo, they went to a quiet room where she explained why she'd come. She did not tell Kingo or Gilgamesh about the Celestials. She spoke only of Icarus's betrayal and the global crisis that threatened Earth. Ajak still intended to stick to her original plan. She would reveal everything to the full team only after meeting up with Cersei and Sprite. Kingo's reaction was a mix of disbelief and shock. Before the Eternals split, he had been very close to Icarus. Kingo had always seen him like an older brother. At first, he found the accusation impossible to accept, but Ajax's steady, resolute gaze planted seeds of doubt. Kingo's assistant, Karen, trembled when Ajax said Earth might be destroyed. Karen had known Kingo for years and had always been his human aide. She had no powers, only the ordinary fear of a mortal told that the world was in peril. After a long, tense silence, Kingo decided he could not fully accept the claim without seeing for himself. He agreed to cooperate with Ajax and wait for an opportunity to confront Icaris and verify the truth firsthand. With that, Ajax's team gained 2 more members, Kingo and his assistant Karen. Ajax had no objection, and the other Eternals accepted them without question. Having Kingo aboard made their travel far easier. He owned a private jet, which let the group move quickly between cities. On the flight, Karen held a camera, while Kingo, unable to stay away from the spotlight despite canceling his film commitments, filmed a vlog. He introduced the Eternals to his audience, Gilgamesh, Tina, Ajax, and peppered them with questions. What he most wanted to know was how Tina's mod wiry had been cured. Ajax had said a human had cured that terrifying terminal illness, and Kingo was desperate to learn which human had accomplished such a thing. Amid laughter and chatter, the private jet sliced through the sky toward their next stop, London. Cersei and Sprite were in that ancient city. They had only recently arrived. The team prepared to rendezvous there, and once together, Ajax planned to disclose the fuller truth. Meanwhile, far from the jet, things were moving swiftly aboard Noah's ship. The internal refit of the Morningstar was nearly finished. Nanorobots had made the work efficient and precise. Those modifications were limited to the ship's internal facilities. The power plant and engines still required extensive research before any changes could be made. Weapons, however, were a different matter. The Morningstar had never been built as a warship, and its armament was weak. Noah planned to upgrade the weapons first, easier to design and install than engines, adding more and more powerful systems and incorporating Hextech and project technologies. With those enhancements, the Morningstar would be able to face other vessels in combat. Noah had no interest in keeping it as a sightseeing yacht. After a long day of overseeing work, Noah sat on the sofa and watched the news. Broadcasters around the world were still sorting through the fallout from the Battle of New York. Aliens and superheroes were no longer myths. Public discussion had exploded. Many people were excited, many others were terrified. Without the heroes' intervention, New York might have been lost. People asked whether they would be as fortunate if another invasion hit their own city. Governments felt the pressure. In response to public panic, they issued statements urging calm, increased space surveillance and detection, reinforced defenses, and opened stronger lines of international cooperation to prepare for external threats. Alongside fears about aliens, another strange change had begun to appear among humans. Researchers across nations were puzzled. After the Battle of New York, many people had experienced unexplained enhancements. Fitness improved, wounds healed faster, and illnesses remitted. Scientists had no idea why. No one outside the Eternals knew about the resurrection wind, so the phenomenon sparked frantic debate. Some people even posted online claiming to have suddenly developed superpowers, but those posts vanished within seconds, and the accounts were quickly banned. The speed and manner of the censorship made observers joke that the posters must have been visited for a water meter check, a tongue-in-cheek way of saying they'd been quietly silenced. Noah watched one of the brief clips vanish and took note of the poster's address. He suspected this might be the sign of another awakened mutant and filed the information away for later. B-level mission, destroy Wild Hydra base, complete. Reward, 500 essence. Huh? Done already? Noah glanced away from the world news playing on the main TV and toward the smaller monitor at his side. The system notification drew his attention, but the image on the screen was what really held him, a ruined compound, smoke and rubble, blood pooling on the ground, and human corpses scattered among the wreckage. It wasn't a clip from a gore movie. This was real, and the feed was a first-person view from Warwick, whom Noah had sent. After the thrill of running a mission last time, Noah had gotten used to delegating. He liked the feeling of sending other people to do the dirty work, so when new missions popped up, he redeployed agents without hesitation. Today's footage showed more than Warwick. Blitzcrank stood amid the destruction, too. The robot had shed its innocuous outer shell and switched to its white Lancer combat frame. Noah had sent both of them. The mission had been classified B-level. In the system's terms, that suggested a serious, sizable Hydra installation, not some minor outpost you'd clear like a street gang. This particular base wasn't part of the S-Shield infiltrated Hydra branch. Dr. Zola's files had revealed connections to multiple Hydra cells, and this site came from that broader cache of intelligence. Noah had teleported Warwick and Blitzcrank to the area, let them engage, and the system's mission tracker refreshed accordingly. Warwick and Blitzcrank leveled the base in under half an hour. Every Hydra agent on site was eliminated. Blitzcrank's feed showed, amid the chaos, a small prison-like lab, rows of experimental beds, and people in white lab gowns slumped on them, apparently sedated or restrained and hardly responsive to the gunfire and explosions outside. Blitzcrank had been tasked not only with combat, but with reconnaissance and data retrieval, copying lab files, extracting samples. The robot sent Noah the footage and the files. Noah skimmed the transmitted records. The occupants had come to their mutant abilities during the resurrection wind. Hydra had rounded them up for study. The research hadn't advanced far. Most of the notes were preliminary. The mutants' powers were weak and erratic. By whatever grading system applied in the X-Men universe, these subjects clustered around Epsilon Delta levels, limited, inconsistent abilities that were barely controllable. Noah thought of the Hedgehog man he'd met earlier, Delta level and still barely competent at using his power. These lab rats were a step below. He relaxed back in his chair. "Too weak," he muttered. Looking over the profiles, he smirked at a description of someone with sprouting cat ears. That'll probably make the furries happy. He gave the files one last pass, then ordered Blitzcrank to extract genetic samples and send the subjects and their data to the nearest city for local authorities to process. Noah's mind wandered to more valuable possibilities. Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, Wanda and Quicksilver, had been experimented on by Baron Strucker with the Mind Stone in the original timeline. Here, the Mind Stone wasn't in Hydra hands. It was firmly in Noah's control. But the resurrection wind had already caused many latent mutants to awaken. If the Maximoffs had been affected by the wind, they might have manifested their powers without Strucker's intervention. Wanda, especially, was a prize. If she progressed, she could access chaos magic and become the Scarlet Witch, an asset of tremendous destructive and manipulative potential. He considered going to Kosovo the next day to check personally. Recruit them, he thought. Like Banner had been recruited for research, Wanda and Pietro could be recruited as frontline operatives. Banner handled the labs. The Maximoffs could be power on demand. Dr. Zola's dossier didn't cover everything. Strucker's stronghold, for instance, wasn't in the data. Baron Strucker ran his own branch, and while he'd seemed roughed up in the old movies, Noah wouldn't discount him. He weighed options. Continue sending Warwick and Blitzcrank to smash Hydra bases and shake things out, or switch to a lower-profile approach. The former was efficient but blunt. Demolishing bases openly would draw attention and risk tipping off other Hydra factions and rival powers. Noah decided on caution. He would have his robots work covertly from now on, intelligence gathering and sample collection rather than large, conspicuous assaults. With a few taps, he opened a teleportation portal and called Warwick home. Blitzcrank, after uploading the seized data and extracting samples, transferred a handful of rescued civilians to the nearest city for processing. Noah watched the mission panel tick over. Completing this B-level job nudged the progress of the larger A-level Hydra mission upward just a bit. Evidence that Nick Fury and S-Shield were still active and moving pieces on the board. Noah closed the briefing window and, already planning, set Kosovo for tomorrow. Chapter 339, The Hydra Situation. Alexander Pierce had once been under Noah's control through the power of the Mind Stone, little more than a puppet. Noah handed that puppet to Nick Fury, instructing him to use Pierce to root out Hydra elements inside S.H.I.E.L.D. With Pierce under Fury's influence and the Hydra intelligence Noah had already obtained, the balance inside S.H.I.E.L.D. shifted overnight. Hydra's influence, which had quietly infiltrated the organization, was suddenly on the defensive. Fury began methodically dismantling Hydra's cells within S.H.I.E.L.D., while Hydra itself remained unaware. Its supposed leader, Pierce, was already compromised. Fury disclosed the situation in an online meeting. He had intended to call together the same group that had met earlier about Hydra in person, but both Tony and Noah declined, calling an in-person meeting too much trouble. Fury couldn't persuade them, so at Coulson's suggestion, he held the meeting online instead. Fury had qualms about holding a virtual session. He worried about leaks and eavesdroppers. Coulson pointed out that 2 of the attendees had world-class technological skills. If they couldn't guarantee the meeting's security, there was no likely safer option. Convinced, Fury agreed to the online format. Noah could track Fury's progress directly on his task panel. The A-level task for Hydra displayed a percentage that climbed toward completion. When that value hit a certain mark, it would mean Hydra had been eradicated from Earth and the task would be finished. The meter was rising, but slowly. For one thing, the Hydra operatives inside S.H.I.E.L.D. were only part of the problem. More importantly, Fury was being cautious. He had plenty of advantages and intelligence, but he was not going to publicly expose every Hydra agent. If the purge blew up into a scandal, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s credibility could collapse, and the organization itself might face dissolution. Fury knew the stakes, so he chose steady, quiet dismantling over dramatic spectacle, one careful, irreversible step at a time. Noah had no objection. He didn't have to do anything himself, and the task progress kept moving forward. With S.H.I.E.L.D.'s internal Hydra quietly handled, Noah could spend his time dealing with other Hydra cells around the world, finishing A-level tasks and occasionally picking up B-level ones. It was comfortable work. Earlier, he dispatched Warwick and Blitzcrank to take down a sizable Hydra base, which completed a B-level task and awarded 500 essence. That pushed Noah's total to 4,000 essence, only 2,000 away from a 10-pull summon. The thought of an upcoming summon had Noah wondering where to place it. Asgard? Kamartaj? Perhaps while exploring the universe aboard the Morning Star? Or should he try the Hell Dimension? No, that was far too risky. Blitzcrank had already finished his part. The awakened mutants rescued from the Hydra base were sent to the nearest city. Noah checked their identities. They were civilians from that country and all appeared on the missing persons lists. He routed them to local authorities and had Blitzcrank transmit the evidence to the police before opening a teleportation portal to send the construct back. With Blitzcrank gone, Noah switched off the projection screen. Today's system daily task was complete. Lying back on the sofa, Noah felt the pace of his life ease now that he wasn't personally completing every daily task. Those tasks hadn't taken up huge amounts of time, but doing the same thing every day wears on anyone. Now he could set his own schedule, play, relax, or pursue other matters. He told himself Wanda and Quicksilver could wait until tomorrow, and he still needed to hear from Ajax about the Eternals. There wasn't anything urgent left for today. He turned off the TV and went upstairs to play video games with Gwen, purely innocent gaming, of course. Timeline. 5 days passed without incident. Noah had planned to find Baron Strucker's base in Sokovia and recruit 2 powerful mutants, but he still hadn't uncovered Strucker's location. Dr. Zola's memory files contained little useful information on Strucker, so Noah resorted to a systematic search across Sokovia. Every day after finishing his tasks, he sent Blitzcrank, Warwick, and swarms of nanobots to scour the country. Sokovia was a small, landlocked nation in this universe, a fictional place, and the nanobots turned up several minor Hydra outposts, but not Strucker's fortress. To avoid alerting Hydra, Noah didn't attack those small bases. He had Blitzcrank infiltrate them to gather intelligence, but the results were empty. Over those 5 days, the daily tasks had netted Noah 800 essence, bringing his total to 4,800. Chapter 340, Other Hydra Reactions. Morningstar Research, 5 days, 5 sea-level tasks, 800 essence. Of those 5 tasks, 3 paid out 200 essence each, the high-value sea-level tasks, while the other 2 only gave 100 essence, the lowest, simplest tier. Noah felt the system adjusting to his growing strength. Missions that might once have paid 200 essence were beginning to fall into the 100 range. The 3 200-point tasks had been Hydra bases he'd located using Dr. Zola's intelligence. They weren't as large as the B-level bases he'd faced before, so 200 essence made sense. On the fourth day, he chose a base even smaller than the earlier three, and it only yielded 100 essence. It was a well-guarded site, staffed with dangerous Hydra soldiers, yet the reward was still only 100. Only after he collected that 100 essence did Noah accept that the system automatically scaled rewards down as his power increased. He remembered grinding in Hell's Kitchen when some sizable gang-related sea-level tasks would hand out 200 essence. A Hydra base like this, if it deployed its full might, could easily wipe out those gangs, and yet it offered less. Noah wasn't overly upset. 100 was still the floor. His daily sweeps of Hydra outposts were mainly to clear the A-level objective while keeping up with routine tasks. On the fifth day, he picked another small base and let Warwick and Blitzcrank run a one-click sweep. After the automated purge, he ordered them to incinerate the site, leaving no evidence. In 5 short days, 5 Hydra bases had been destroyed. If Hydra wasn't foolish, they would notice. Word spread through Hydra factions around the world, outside the S.H.I.E.L.D. branches, that a mysterious force was striking covertly. Each attack was precise and fast. The assaulted bases never managed to transmit a distress call, as if some invisible hand had erased them. Hydra scrambled to trace the source, but repeatedly found nothing. Their intelligence felt compromised. The enemy obviously knew Hydra positions, while Hydra had no clue and could only react. When a base failed to report for several days, headquarters would send investigators, only to arrive at a site razed to the foundation. But only the 5 branches whose bases Noah had destroyed felt true pressure. Other branches became wary, but also a little relieved. The relationships between Hydra cells were distant. Baron Strucker in Sokovia, for example, scoffed at the reports. Noah had intentionally avoided Hydra in Sokovia because he still needed to find Wanda and Quicksilver, so Strucker simply ordered tighter defenses and didn't take the matter too seriously. Many leaders chalked the losses up to personnel who had accidentally provoked some ancient secret power. Hydra had operated long enough to know the world harbored many obscure organizations. Most were quiet until angered, and their reprisals could be savage. Better to fortify than to confront blindly. After 5 days, when Noah's tasks refreshed, his robot subordinates handled the missions while he stayed in the lab, pressing on with the Morningstar's energy system. He'd not neglected research amid the downtime. Banner, at the island base, had joined the team. When Banner first saw the Morningstar, his jaw nearly dropped. Noah had already shown himself a prodigy, building nanobots and a powerful AI, but a spaceship materializing before him still impressed the scientist. Noah explained the energy plan. Rework the Morningstar's power system to accept multiple energy sources, solar, nuclear, grid electricity, even magical energy, so the ship could be recharged in more ways. The Morningstar had been summoned from the League of Legends Odyssey universe. If its onboard energy ran out, Noah had no idea how to replenish it from that universe. Making the energy system adaptable was the immediate priority. Banner was eager to help. As one of Marvel's brightest minds, his presence accelerated the work. With Noah, Lysandra, and Banner collaborating, the modifications neared completion. Noah estimated testing could begin tomorrow. Meanwhile, in Chicago, the local police had cordoned off a house on a residential street. Neighbors had called in the night before to report a loud disturbance. When officers were dispatched, they received another call from the same resident. There was a body in the yard where the commotion had come from. The caller had gone to check and discovered that the noise had come from his neighbor, Fastos's house. In Fastos's yard lay a dark shape that looked unmistakably like a corpse. Police confirmed the presence of a body and secured the scene.